Well, good afternoon, folks. Welcome back to Three's In. It's been a while since I've been on the channel with Christmas, New Year's, little bit of the flu, a head cold, and a brief bout of COVID. It's been a busy month. But at any rate, been thinking about you and probably time to get back into a few stories here. The first one I have for you this afternoon, I actually heard from General DeLonga on the ramp at Kelly Air Force Base during an air show. Happened to be out there at the base awaiting the air show when I ran into General DeLonga. I had heard of him before, but I'd never met him until this day. And I can't remember who it was I was with, but whoever it was actually knew him. And we got to talking, and he told us one of the funniest stories I've ever heard. So without further ado, apparently he was a wing commander over in Vietnam at one point. I think maybe Da Nang, but I'm not sure. At any rate, he was an F-4 wing commander, and on the base they had a contingent, a detachment of A-37s. Now, the A-37 was the T-37. It was actually the AT-37 that they had taken, swapped out the engines for T-38 engines, J-85s, and then put some hard points on for bombs, and then put a minigun in the nose. That's the way they converted it to an AT-37, and it was used as a light ground attack aircraft. Very effective over there, in the south at least. Probably wouldn't survive too well up north. At any rate, he had this detachment, and they'd been bugging him to come fly with him. So this one Saturday morning, I think he said he decided he'd just get suited up, go down and get a check out in the A-37 and go out and see what he could find. So he had a check out in it, apparently, so he went out and signed out an airplane and took off with four, I think, 250-pound bombs and full load of machine gun bullets. So he takes off and he heads up and contacts a FAC, a forward air controller, and asks him if he had anything for him. Well, it turns out this FAC did. So General DeLonga heads over to him and makes visual contact with him, and the FAC starts the briefing. He says, "You see that river down there?" And General DeLonga says, "Yes, I do." He says, "Okay." He says, "You see, in the middle of that river is an island. It's running north-south." And he says it's about maybe an eighth to a quarter of a mile wide and about 3/4 of a mile long. He says, "That's your target." So he says, "I want you to come in from the south and bomb to the north with a right pull." Meaning coming in, and then once he releases his bomb, comes up and makes a pull off to the right. It's okay. He says, "We're going to make 4 passes. On each pass, I want you to drop a single bomb starting from the south end of the island. We'll work our way north." He said, "Then come back and we'll work with the gun, make a couple passes with the gun just to clean up anything that's left over." General DeLonga says, "Got it, no problem." So he says, "Okay." He says, "If you got the island," he says, "you're cleared in hot." So General DeLonga rolls in, and he says as he's coming downhill, he's kind of jinking around a little bit just to make it harder for the Gomers to hit him if they happen to shoot at him. Now, for those of you that may be not in tune, Gomers was a derogatory term that we use quite frequently for the bad guys. And it was meant to be derogatory. So anyway, he was trying to avoid any ground fire from the Gomers. So he comes in, he drops his first bomb and pulls off and hit the south end of the island as briefed. Comes back around, and the FAC says, "Okay, nice hit." He says, "Drop the next one a little bit north." So he does. He says he's coming in. He says he's just jinking all over the place as he comes in, stabilizes, drops a bomb, and then starts jinking on his way out. Good bomb, good bomb. So he comes back around, runs it a third time, then a fourth. And he said by now, he said he's building up a little bit of a sweat because he said it was hot as hell that day. And so now he comes back in and he armed up the minigun, and he's going to make a couple passes with the minigun. So on a strafing pass, usually made a little bit lower angle approach. So he gets down and he comes in and lines up at the south end of the island and starts strafing. Just strafes the whole thing up to the north, and then pulls off again, jinking like crazy, and comes back around, makes his second gun pass. So after his second gun pass, he pulls off and heads out a little bit away from the island. And he says, all right, he says, I'm standing by to copy the BDA. Now, the BDA was the bomb damage assessment. So he says, standing by to copy the BDA. And Fat came back and says, oh, sir, he says, we don't have a BDA for you today. He says, what we had, he said, we got some new guys in country, some grunts. And he said, they're working their way into their relative positions. And they asked if they had anybody around that could give them a little bit of an air show today. So he says, I just decided this would be a good day for you to get a little bit of a workout and for the grunts to get a nice air show. General DeLonga said, I can't believe it. He says, I busted my ass going down trying to avoid ground fire and so forth just for a bunch of grunts sitting over there on the banks of the river watching an air show. He says, if it hadn't happened to me, I wouldn't have believed it. So those are the stories I just love, especially when I can share them with you, having heard them firsthand. Welcome back. Nice to see everybody.